Up until this point, we've been talking about people who were closest to Jesus, people who knew him best. And we haven't so far talked about the one person who was closest of all and who knew him best of all. How did Jesus see himself? Well, he saw himself, amongst other things, as the temple. I know, it confused a lot of people back then. Because we know this, a temple is not usually a description, a title for a human being. Temples, we know, are made out of stone and precious metals and things, not flesh and bone. Temples have priests walking around inside of them, making sure that everything is done just right. The people, Jesus, come to the temple. That's how this thing works. Temple is where people can go in order to meet with God. Now, if a person is the temple, how do they get in? Where is the door? And they had a temple. This was what was so confusing for them. They had a temple which wasn't just adequate, it was a wonder of the world. It took the breath away. It was a howling success. Not just a going concern, this. There were hundreds of thousands of people coming to the temple at the major festivals. This is our temple, Jesus. We got one. And you are one of the people who is sometimes found in it. Well, he was. Jesus was sometimes found at the temple. But he knew its limitations better than anyone. And when you read the second half of John chapter 2, you can see this. How can a lifeless building be truly the home of the living God? And just because it's a temple and it's awesome and it's magnificent and it fills you with wonder just looking at the thing, does that mean that everything that goes on inside its walls becomes holy? Can you not set aside areas that are really about making money? Like the gift shop in the cathedral. And when it succeeds in making money, don't you make those areas bigger and bigger and bigger? Yes, you do. Can you not, even though it's the temple, still draw someone aside in these kind of hallowed precincts and murmur a bit of gossip in their ear or plan a murder? Of course you can, and they did. But then if that's what it contains, hasn't it stopped being the temple? Hasn't it stopped being the home of God, where you can go and meet with him? Jesus knew what he was talking about when he identified as the temple. The living God can't be contained in a lifeless building. Doesn't matter how big you make it in its scale. You can pile up gold and silver and precious stones. It's still not going to match, for sheer glory, this one human life totally dedicated to being God's home. When you really are God's home, you don't wait for people to come to you. You go and find them. When you really are God's home, you don't keep people out because they are sick or blind or lame. You go and make them well. When you really are God's home, and there are ungodly people who want to get to God, you don't stop them getting to him. You stop them being ungodly. Maybe even listening to this, maybe through reading the second half of John chapter 2, we start to understand a little bit about why Jesus died. after all, if in today's parlance you'd spent billions of pounds on a truly awesome temple, the temple as far as you're concerned, and you find that one man has turned up who by his sheer lifestyle is making it redundant, what would you do? There's another question, though, that arises and gets answered for everyone who asks it. And the question is, he's the temple? All right, so where's the door? If you have been, thank you for listening.